what we are striving at as South Sudanese is to be able to make our homegrown solutions to our problems. This is our ultimate aspiration.
Correct.
Because also, in the end of the day, we want to acknowledge that we are an independent state. We must run our state without any foreign interference. But our current situation was the reason why we had to end up with outsiders, working to make sure peace is in South Sudan, because we failed to manage our affairs among ourselves. And just like how South Sudan even came into existence, South Sudan came into existence because of external support. If you remember, we did not capture any major city during the struggle for our independence. We did not capture Khartoum, we did not capture Malakal, we did not capture Juba, we did not capture Wau. The hybrid court is the only legitimate court we can try, the cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity. If there is anybody who has been accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity, the hybrid court is the one who will actually pick based on the records, because everyone in our government has the records. There are even those who have been sanctioned. Those are records. They were not just sanctioned out of the blue. They were sanctioned because of war crimes and crimes against humanity. You know a lot of people. Most of them senior government officials. They were sanctioned because of war crimes and crimes against humanity. But nobody is saying they are criminal now. They have the benefit of the doubt, and they will be, if necessary, they will be cleared by a court in the future that they did not commit any war crimes. So the same would apply with Victoria. The premise on which these people were arrested, it is not really clear in as far as the law is concerned. And when I talk about the law, our current supreme law in South Sudan is the RRCs. Because the RRCs, if you look at chapter 8, the last chapter of the RRCs, which talks about the supremacy of the agreement. In a sense that in the event of any contradiction between the agreement and the domestic laws of South Sudan, pre-existing domestic laws, the agreement prevails. In that sense, Dr. Riek Machar is a principal to the RRCs. He's a guarantor. I mean, he's a principal, he's a signatory. The signatory
Correct.
to the RRCs, as you are aware. And by that virtue, if there is an alleged crime he has committed, that has to be treated, vis-a-vis the provisions of the RRCs. I think the assertion that it is Dr. Riek and IO who are responsible for Nasir incidents, that assertion is wrong. If you are following very keenly the series of events which led to the Nasir incident, you will not say it is Dr. Riek who is responsible. Those responsible are actually the ones who command the SPDF. Because Nasir incidents, what even triggered that mass mobilization of the white army?
It was disarmament.
Disarmament? And who was doing this disarmament? Johnson Olweny.
SSPDF.
Johnson Olweny was the one who was commissioned to go there. And who was Johnson Olweny in the context of the current military setup of South Sudan? Johnson Olweny, as you remember well, was in the IO until 2020. 2020, the government sabotaged his appointment as governor of Upper Nile, as recommended by IO, and then went behind in the back of IO and engaged Olweny until Olweny defected with the rest of other generals. They defected from IO. Olweny continued to run his own Agwelek militia. Why would you SPDF do it alone? It should be done by all the parties. Army. It is not yet a national army. It is still considered as a SPLM-IO army, according to the peace agreement. It is affiliated to SPLM-IO. SPLM-IO is affiliated to SPLM-IO. So some of the SWA parties, including the party of Lamakol, they have their own forces. Other parties in SWA also have their own forces. So everybody has their own forces. And these forces are supposed to be merged together now for us to have a national army, which is recognized by all the parties. But the SPDF...
So in your case, you don't recognize the SSPDF as a
currently, the SPDF is allied to SPLM-IO. It is a partisan army. Until it is merged with the rest of the forces in the country, and everybody has accepted now we have a unified army, which is going to exercise the neutral mandate of protecting the territorial integrity of South Sudan and not be used by any individual to settle political scores.
Scholars in ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Point, the home of scholars. At the Scholars Hub, it's about information, transformation, and entertainment. I'm your host, Admiral Carl Gordon, and tonight at this very hot seat, we have none other than Gai Mayen Luk. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother.
For this, I'll give you now the liberty to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carl Gordon, for hosting me to this good platform. As you have already said, my name is Gai Mayen Luk. I'm from Lagos State, Irolist County, and politically, I am a member of SPLM-IO. Thank you, and a member of Parliament as well.
Our main substance on the show today will be centered around focus and particularity of certain issues affecting our countries and livelihood in general. You're from Lake State.
Exactly.
And some time back, we went into a very controversial, disagreement with some people from, especially Rumbek people. Do you mind now clarifying the air for them?
Well,
do you remember your exact statement?
I remember the statement about praising Agar community.
Yes, yeah.
It was not. It's still fresh in the memory of many people. It was about a month ago, and it was a genuinely intended praise, to the community, because Agar community is like our big brother in Lagos State in the hierarchy of communities of lakes, and personally, I'm proud of them, and I did not think I was wrong to praise them for many good, for exemplary, way of life that Agar community shows, in as far as the broader Giang value system is concerned. So I was genuinely happy, to express my, my pride. And there was a fraudulent slip, what you would call a fraudulent slip for, if we are talking.
Yes.
But this was, something which was written, and there was one single word. I think it was a E in the spelling of the hierarchy, which I had erroneously omitted.
Okay.
Mistakenly, and that message went out. It was received by many people, but some few,
so interpretation
detractors, mostly political detractors, who wanted to pit me against the community, and try to discredit me.
Yes.
They spin it around and say that I had insulted the community, which was wrong. But I'm glad almost 99% of Agar community welcomed the statement. They were happy, and I was really humbled by that. So I do not mind about a few people who said there was an ill intention. I don't mind about that because the community welcomed it generally. Yeah. Thank you.
So the damage and the mileage was okay, although taken out of context or
just by few people. It was not many people who took it out of context. It was few people with political, who were driven by political, political motivated malice to discredit me, to pit me against the community. So it was just those few. I don't want to mention their names, but the bigger community was welcoming, because it is a pride, for somebody like I come from the deeper end of lakes, from
Yerol, yeah.
And for someone coming from there to praise another community, that is not something we can be taken badly by anyone. Yeah, so that's what I can say about that. Thank you.
Talking of political malice, as a journalist, I could see even from the comments, some calling you names. One of the names which has been repeatedly been appearing on the comments is, I don't know, they have already enlisted you into the list of political orphans. Did you agree with such sentiments?
I don't even know what that means. Political orphan. A political orphan, is it in a literal sense of being an orphan, that you've lost a parent,
I don't know. Or a
That
political
is
godfather, maybe.
that is meaningless.
Yeah.
I'm not a political orphan. I am a political player, an active political player in the politics of South Sudan.
Yeah.
Those who are saying it may actually be spectators. They may just be fence sitters.
Correct.
They do not really have, the right to label someone like me who's actively participating in our national, discourse. Because actually, I am not beholden to a personality. I am driven by the pursuit of an idea. And that idea is the idea of reforms. I'm not following any personality. Someone may, in a simplistic manner, just say that I am a follower of Riek Machar, Dr. Riek Machar. But I'm not just a follower of Dr. Riek Machar. Dr. Riek Machar and I, happen to identify ideologically. We happen to have a meeting of minds on the issue of reforms. So he's my comrade and then my leader, in that organization. But I'm not just a follower. So that really, makes it totally laughable that people can, call him a godfather of some sort. Even Dr. Riek Machar himself will not, subscribe to the idea of being blindly followed and being seen as a godfather. Godfather. He's a comrade, he's a leader, and he's championing a cause that many people, subscribe to.
Talking of your political ideologies and what you subscribe to, and your trajectory into following the party that is the SPLM-IO. Before you went into the parliament, Honorable Gai, you're one of the vibrant young youth who are championing for the reforms that you just stated and so on. And people now asking what happened to the guy we knew before he went into the parliament. We don't see him championing for or shouting or crying for reforms that he was advocating for. Was it to get him into power, or was it to get him to the system? Like they don't see such. And from my own standpoint, you've gone into the parliament, you've been to the system. What bills or what motions have you tabled in the parliament to bring the reforms that you stood for?
Well, I want us to look at the broader, layout of the parliament and what are the roles of parliamentarians. Our citizens should know that. According to our constitution, and I think also conventionally, internationally, the parliamentarian has 3 roles. Number 1 role is representation. This is the primary role, representing the people of your constituency. The second role is legislation, making laws. You have to make laws. And then the third role is oversight. Oversight, parliament is an arm of government which conducts an oversight duty over the executive. These are the 3 roles of the parliament in the broader terms. Now, beginning with the representation. Representation, as you are aware, we are in a transition. Our legitimacy as MPs in the current political dispensation is drawn from political appointments from our parties. We were not elected by our constituencies. But all the same, we still represent those constituencies, even if they did not elect us. I did what I could on that arena. I think if you, go to the constituency I come from and you ask for some of the most active MPs during this transition, those who have actually connected more with our people, with the people of Irul East constituency. Somebody who will not mention my name will be dishonest to him or herself. I have been deeply, involved with my community, with my county, along that line. So I have done the representation part. The legislation part, this is making laws, participating now in making laws, bills, bills and other legislative duties which are done. Also, because I'm somebody who is ideologically, grounded, guided by the spirit of reforms, and intellectually, I am, informed. I know what is supposed to be done, on those bills. I have been one of the key legislators, and as far as enacting laws is concerned during this transition. Our constitution ties the hands of the MPs when it comes to legislations. All the bills, they originate from the executive. All the bills which come to the parliament originate from the executive.
Can't you also?
The only exception is what is called private members' bill, which can be initiated by member parliament. But there is also a very restrictive provision underpinning, that exception. That a private member's bill should not have any financial implication. And if a bill doesn't have any financial implication, then how is it going to change the lives of the people you intend to change their lives? It will not have any meaning. So, because of that, you find that almost all the bills come from the executive. And the parliament only does is scrutiny and then enacting them. And then the last role of oversight, which is doing the oversight work over the executive. Along that line, during this transition, I have been the chairperson of the parliamentary committee on youth and sports, the specialized committee on youth and sports. And the committee makes sure that's not me as an individual now, that is us as a committee generally. We do oversight over the Ministry of Youth and Sports. We scrutinize the budget allocation to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and recommend realignment of priorities where we see the priorities serving, this portfolio, serving the people that are being targeted by this portfolio. If we see the institution not putting the priorities in the correct way, we recommend them, we direct. We also direct them on policies. What policies are they coming up with, and how are those policies going to affect? We interrogate their policies in a sense. We have been doing that effectively, and that is not an individual work that I can talk of. We've been doing that as a committee, and the records are there for themselves.
Yeah, as part of that committee, just to ask a point here. Okay, and youth and sports, coming to sports itself, I think there are two sports which have done really well. That is basketball and football, in terms of putting South Sudan on the map out there. But some other sports they feel left out, especially these most of the Olympic sports. They're currently not active in the country. Let's talk about the combat sports like boxing and so on. Those are Olympic sports. Why are they not being given the same opportunities compared to the other two sports that I've mentioned before?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we have noted that concern as well as an oversight body over that ministry of youth and sports. But the challenge is resources. For these sports bodies to be functional, to be vibrant, they need resources. But when you go to our budget allocations, you get one of the budget books, and you see the appropriation bill. But say if you look at the appropriation bill, like this now, this is the season of budget. The appropriation bill is going to come out in the next few weeks, probably, although we are already behind the schedule. Our budget discussion should have started from April, because our parliament was meant to come back from recess since April. But up to now, for some reason, parliament is still on recess, and budget has not been tabled. But when the budget is tabled later, I urge you to go and look for the appropriation bill to see the allocation, budgetary allocations. You'll see the Ministry of Youth and Sports at the bottom end of the budgetary, priorities, and allocated an insignificant portion of the, envelope resource, of the resource envelope. And ironically also, the little allocation which is given to the institution, the Minister of Finance does not release it to them. That's why it is not really doing that well. Basketball is thriving because of the fact that most of our players come from the diaspora. These are not homegrown talents. For us to have homegrown talents, we have to first create the sports infrastructure. We have to create the sports environment. We need money, and we don't have it. The only stadium we have now was constructed by FIFA. It was not the government of South Sudan, that Juba Stadium. The government of South Sudan did not spend any money there. It is FIFA.
Come on.
We constructed it, yes. So our government is not investing in sports. That's the issue.
Talking of now issues at hand, we can say technically you are in exile at the moment. yeah, with the events that have been happening in Juba and so on. Like your chairman of the SPLM-IO is currently under house arrest and awaiting to go to some court procedures, as the Minister of Information stated a while back. And I think what was coming to this case of the root cause into this crisis and to this predicament that the SPLM party is in right now, some political commentators have it that it was because you are given the opportunity as a party and other parties as well to go into elections, but SPLM-IO was one of the main parties that objected the elections, and hence maybe you're currently sleeping in the bed that you guys made on your own.
On the issue of the detention of my chairman and the likes of the Minister of Petroleum, Honorable Potkang, and the likes of General Doblam, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the SPDF, the Unified Command, I would say what you have been hearing from the media, from the likes of Michael McQuay and the rest, is just propaganda. Because the premise on which these people were arrested, it is not really clear in as far as the law is concerned. And when I talk about the law, our current supreme law in South Sudan is the RRCs. Because the RRCs, if you look at chapter 8, the last chapter of the RRCs, which talks about the supremacy of the agreement, in a sense that in the event of any contradiction between the agreement and the domestic laws of South Sudan, pre-existing domestic laws, the agreement prevails. In that sense, Dr. Riek Machar is a principal to the RRCs. Is a guarantor. I mean, is a principal, the signatory. The signatory
Correct.
to the RRCs, as you are aware. And by that virtue, if there is an alleged crime he has committed, that has to be treated, vis-a-vis the provisions of the RRCs. The only accountability mechanism we have under this transitional arrangement, the accountability mechanisms we have, they are for military cases. We have a body led by foreigners called Citizen, which must investigate any security-related, violations or crimes which have been committed. Citizen has to investigate and document and report to the guarantors. Secondly, the other mechanism is hybrid court under Chapter 5, Transitional Justice. The hybrid court is the only legitimate court which can try, the cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity. If there is anybody who has been accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity, the hybrid court is the one who will actually pick based on the records, because everyone in our government has records. There are even those who have been sanctioned. Those are records. They were not just sanctioned out of the blue. They were sanctioned because of war crimes and crimes against humanity. You know a lot of people. Most of them senior government officials. They were sanctioned because of war crimes and crimes against humanity. But nobody is saying they are criminal now. They have the benefit of the doubt, and they will be, if necessary, they will be cleared by a court in the future that they did not commit any war crimes. So the same would apply with Victoria. And there is no party under the current, unity government arrangement. There is no party to the agreement. We can say we want to try the other party to the agreement, especially the leader of that party. There's no competence.
You're more inclined to the release of Dr. Riek Machar through through foreign pressure, and instead of the local courts, as you've just stated. So do you reject the South Sudan legal system?
Well, I think I will be repeating myself because, as I've just said, the domestic courts in South Sudan, our domestic judiciary doesn't have the competence to try Victoria, who's the principal to the RRCs. This current supreme law of the land. They don't have it. And I think that it is highly suspected. The current Chief Justice, the previous Chief Justice and his deputy were fired because they refused. They said openly that they don't have the competency to try a principle to the RRCs. They don't have the jurisdictional power to do that. And to answer you further on the aspect of international pressure, the current peace we are implementing is an internationally guaranteed peace agreement. It was brokered by the IGAD. It was, witnessed and also signed by many international guarantors, including the African Union. The African Union actually established an ad hoc body called the C5, made up of South Africa, Rwanda, Niger, Algeria, and Chad. The C5. And more than that, we have the Troika, we have the European Union, we have the People's Republic of China. We have many international bodies which guaranteed this peace. They were witnesses. So RRC is like a peace treaty, which is actually recognized under the Vienna Convention on Peace Treaties.
What do you tell the people who are saying that our domestic problems can only be solved internally in the country? What's your view on that?
What we are striving at as South Sudanese is to be able to make our homegrown solutions to our problems. This is our ultimate aspiration.
Correct.
Because also, in the end of the day, we want to acknowledge that we are an independent state. We must run our state without any foreign interference. But our current situation was the reason why we had to end up with outsiders, working to make sure peace is in South Sudan, because we failed to manage our affairs among ourselves. And just like how South Sudan even came into existence. South Sudan came into existence because of external support. If you remember, we did not capture any major city during the struggle for our independence. We did not capture Khartoum, we did not capture Malakal, we did not capture Juba, we did not capture Wow as SPLA, our liberation movement. They didn't. But how we ended up getting our independence was not because we defeated the Khartoum-based regime, but because there was international pressure for peace in the Sudan and for people of South Sudan to be given the right to self-determination. That's how we got our independence. So we cannot write off at this point when we are still struggling to find our feet, to manage our affairs. We cannot write off the significance of the international community on the affairs of the Republic of South Sudan.
Honorable Gai, let me just take you back to what you just said. You said the SPLA did not capture some of the major cities that you talked about, the Malakal, Wow, and so on. Some may have it. As you can see, more or less in touch with the ground, and some even other people views, mostly. They attribute to the fact that your chairman, that is Dr. Riek Machar, has been accused of this, the 1991 massacre. They're saying, had that not happened, some of these towns would have been captured by then. How false is it to you?
Well, I wouldn't say it is false. It's just an assertion. But when we look at our history, our history of liberation, we should not pick out certain incidences and ignore the others. If you look at our political history from 1983, in Ethiopia, when all our revolutionary leaders went to Ethiopia to form their movement, when they went to Ethiopia in 1983, they disagreed from there. That's where it all started from. There was a Nyanya 2 faction, then there was a SPLM faction. The Nyanya 2 faction led by an uncle of Dr. younger uncle of Gai Mayen, who actually comes from Twitch. And deputized by a man called Samuel Gai Tut, who was a former member of parliament in the regional government, the Bilalier and Joseph Lagu government. There were those of Abdallah Chol and the other people. That was the Nyanya 2 faction. And then the other faction was led by Dr. John Garang, which became the leadership of SPLA. They disagreed from there on the ideology. The other group in Nyanya 2 wanted outright succession, war to be waged. But the SPLA group wanted, to fight for a united Sudan. This is where dispute began to start. But Anyanya Two was defeated. Kwaratem died. Samuel Gaitut was killed under very, high circumstances. Kwaratem was also killed in a very brutal way. And all the rest, the Anyanya Two leaders were eliminated. And then SPLA, continued. But along the line, from 1987, SPLA began experiencing fractures. The first person to rebel was the second in command of the SPLA, Commander Carbino Kwanyinabol. By 1991, actually, many of the senior leaders in the SPLA hierarchy, the original political high command, had already disagreed with Dr. John Garang. And the disagreement of Dr. John Garang and Dr. Riek and Dr. Lam, it was the natural disagreement on the ideology. But because things inspired a lot of control and violence, reached an unprecedented scale, which caused the movement. This one, I think this is why 1991 is seen as a major incident.
Yeah, it
but
is.
There are a lot of setbacks. The setbacks began from 1983 in Ethiopia.
1991 is attributed as
onward. And 1991, Dr. Riek and Dr. Lamakol were actually less senior compared to those who had rebelled before them. Carbino Kwanyin was more senior than Dr. Riek. Arongtona Rock was more senior than Dr. Riek and Dr. Lam. And Gordon Kongchwal was the 1991 Nasir faction. It was led by this group. So we should not look at these incidents in isolation. We should look at our history holistically. And we make an objective analysis. And not personify. If we personify it and we make a single one person, that to me it really appears dishonest, because there were a lot of contradictions in our struggle.
That aside,
and our success eventually, probably it was because of these contradictions. Because 1991 also, you should look at the flip side of it. It was because 1991, the 1991 faction, the Nasir faction, if you have read their declaration, they had come out to highlight the aspect of self-determination for the people of South Sudan. SPLM should change to self-determination from the New Sudan vision, which was for liberating the entire Sudan. And eventually, in 1994, the Chugrum Convention, if you have followed, the aspect of self-determination was adopted officially by the SPLM-SPLA.
Yeah, but diverting too much, Honorable Guy. Your chairman he has a very heavy yoke on his back in attribution to some of the things that people consider them as major setbacks, as from 91, some say 2013, and so on. Coming to the recent predicament that is happening and so on, your chairman is also has some of the alleged accusations that you just said, the Nasir massacre that has happened, and people are asking, why do the White Army militia chant Viva IO? Does the IO distance itself from the violent actions or encourage them? That is one. And what proof can you offer that the IO is genuinely committed to peaceful solution, not just power through force?
I think the assertion that it is Dr. Riek and IO who are responsible for Nasir incidents, that assertion is wrong. If you are following very keenly the series of events which led to the Nasir incident, the unfortunate Nasir incident, which was indeed very unfortunate, one of the worst catastrophes in our recent history as a country, which really is a very bad stain on the conscience of our nation. Nasir was very, very unfortunate. But if you follow the events which led to Nasir incidents, you will not say it is Dr. Riek who is responsible. Those responsible are actually the ones who command the SSPDF. Because Nasir incidents, what even triggered that mass mobilization of the White Army?
It was disarmament.
Disarmament? And who was doing this disarmament? Johnson Olweny.
SSPDF.
Johnson Olweny was the one who was commissioned to go there. And who was Johnson Olweny in the context of the current military setup of South Sudan? Johnson Olweny, as you remember well, was in the IO until 2020. 2020, the government sabotaged his appointment as governor of Upper Nile, as recommended by IO, and then went behind in the back of IO and engaged Olweny until Olweny defected. with the rest of other generals. They defected from IO. Olweny continued to run his own Agwelek militia. Agwelek, if you remember the history of Agwelek came about as a vigilante force that would protect the interests of the Shulu community, the Cholo community, especially on their matters of land. And this force was what Olweny consolidated to be his army. In 2023, you remember there was a very ugly war between the Agwelek and the White Army in Upper Nile. The war which even threatened the king of Shuluk. The king had to be evacuated from Fashoda to Juba because the White Army threatened the king, and it was because of the war Olweny had with the Olweny's forces, the Agwelek were having with the White Army. So there was that bad blood. So in 2024, the government abruptly decided to make Olweny create a position which does not even exist in the Unified Command, of the peace agreement. They created a position called the Chief for Mobilization for Mobilization and Disarmament outside the structures of the peace agreement. Yet in the peace agreement, we already have DDR process, which is there in the peace agreement. DDR, which should be done holistically. The process of demilitarization, demobilization, rehabilitation should be done like that. What led to the Nasir incidents is because Olweny was dispatched from Bilapam to go to Nasir. And the people of Nasir, the White Army, those who are there, it is not IO that was that fought the soldiers there, because they saw Olweny as an enemy. They had that fresh. They see him as a militia. They don't see him as a legitimate government, actor. They did not see him that way. They saw him as somebody who was coming to fight them. And also they wanted the unified force, according to the peace agreement, to go there and be the ones to deal with them. Not this person that they see as a militia. SPLM-IO warned the government not to send Olweny to Nasir. We are on record. I think the reason why Potkang was even arrested, because in one of the radio talk shows where he was invited alongside some other representatives of peace agreements, including Martin Elia, I think including Dr. Lama Akol and other people, Pot said in that radio show that the government sending Olweny to Nasir is a mistake, which will cause us a problem. And people did not listen to that. It was repeated in the parliament several times. In the parliament. Before, for the last 4 years, the time I spent in the parliament, the issue of Nasir used to be discussed every week. Because there were always clashes between the White Army and the SSPDF. Every week there was always, but those fightings were, they were minor. They were minor because the White Army was not so much concentrated. There were few elements. But when Olweny came, this one sparked mobilization, even across the counties. It was not just Nasir alone. They came from Mulang, they came from elsewhere, and combined, waiting for Olweny to fight him.
Who was commanding the White Army?
The White Army commander was killed. I saw in the news was somebody called Tor Gile. He was killed in that battle. And other people, they were killed.
Was he the legitimate?
Yes, that is, you've probably seen some of the statements. Not CNC as such, because it is not an organized military formation. It is just a community defense force.
Hey, but with the heavy artillery, they had a...
Have you gone to our cattle camps to see the cattle keepers have PKMs? They have all sorts of weapons.
Those guys,
because of mass proliferation of weapons in South Sudan, which is actually a big problem.
They have even shelling equipment.
You had one time when Waniga was kneeling before the civilians in Bor, begging them to hand over their guns to the government and saying that the civilians are more armed than the government. Civilians everywhere are armed in South Sudan because there is a mass proliferation of weapons. That's a major problem. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to us that the civilian elsewhere is having those big guns. They can get them. And this is what we needed to address within the security sector reforms. So to conclude this whole matter of Nasir incident, it was unfortunate. But those responsible are those who decided to send Olweny. And actually, to make matters worse, Olweny could not even proceed to Nasir because his badges got stuck in the river. They did not anticipate that the river was shallow at that time. The beginning of the year, around February, a river is shallow. And it could not facilitate the navigation of that river for the badges to go.
A major general was now killed. That is Major Dak.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to talk about the specific issue of General Major. Because Major Major, yes, he was Major General. He was a senior officer who contributed to the struggle, and it was really very unfortunate. Personally, I feel bad I feel so bad about losing such a decorated officer. I don't talk to him as an individual. It's good for us to look at it as a whole. Those who died there, it was really unfortunate.
Yeah,
it was really
SSPDF.
unfortunate. The entire SPDF and everybody who died there, any South Sudanese life that was lost there, it was really unfortunate. That's what I can say.
Did the IO take any, what do you call it, accountability on that? Because they were chanting Viva IO.
Well, yes, to come to that, thank you for reminding me. I do not remember they said Viva IO. They might have said Viva. And to say Viva is just a normal slogan.
It's Viva IO.
Which means long live. You will produce the evidence where they say Viva IO as White Army. Yeah. But what I heard, yes, they might have said Viva. And this is not something which is we can really be used to make the White Army look like it is the IO. Because you live in here villages, in our villages. Villages say Oye, anything they say Oye. Oye is a slogan of the SPLM-IO. Doesn't mean those villages, they are SPLM members. Because being a member of a political organization, it entails many things. You have to be a registered member, and you have to subscribe to that organization in certain tangible terms. But just because somebody chants the slogan of that organization does not make they may either be supporters of that organization or sympathizers of the organization, but it does not make them members of the organization. So you cannot use that. You cannot, based on the admissibility of evidence in the court of law, you cannot admit that as evidence to incriminate an organization just because somebody chanted their slogan. So that is really, I don't see that as a major issue. But White Army is not part and parcel of organizations. IO is a community defense force that fight for their own community. The same way you find community defense forces anywhere. We have in our GM societies, we have Galwang, we have vigilante forces that protect our communities from those who are coming to raid our cattle, from those who are actually coming to harm us in any way. Every community you find that in South Sudan, it is normal.
I think for our country to move forward, don't you think the government needs to own the autonomy of power and that one and monopoly of violence and by achieving that it has to disarm the citizens, disband those vigilante forces, and so on?
Well, I think that is the direction we are heading towards. We are heading the transitional arrangement we are now in. It is meant to usher us into a permanent political dispensation where the government, as the legitimate state actor, enjoys the sole monopoly of violence.
Yes.
Because this is what gives the government power to enforce laws. The reason why we don't have that currently is because when we got our independence, actually, the current army we have from the beginning, yes, SPLA as a former rebel movement. SPLA was a rebel movement fighting for the independence. So you could say SPLA, in a way, it was a militia, although it was doing a revolutionary cause. And then other militias, upon the signing of the CPA, you see in 2006, there was what was called the Big Ten strategy between the militias of Paul Matip, the late General Paul Matip, having a discussion with the SPLA, and then there was a merger. Matip came with about 60,000 soldiers from his former militia, who was actually fighting against the SPLA previously. They were around 60,000, and mostly from his Bulnuer community. And this militia was merged under the Big Ten strategy and became the deputy commander-in-chief in 2006. And we did not have any comprehensive, any rigorous arrangement to transform the former SPLA and these other militias, which were now merged to the SPLA, that is now the SPDF. There was no rigorous transformative process these people were subjected to train them to become national army. The same thing continued up to 2013. 2013, the former loosely, merged forces of the SPLA and other militia groups. When the 2013 political violence broke out, they disintegrated further. And that is why we had the former warring parties, which now, after all the ugly fights until 2018, RRCs was signed. And RRCs has a provision, Chapter 2, which gives a very comprehensive means of merging all these former militias or these former warring groups to one national army through a well-laid out strategy. Security, strategic, from a security strategic point of view, which is also highlighted by the agreement. And that's why Chapter 2 would have been implemented, would have a national army, and then would have succeeded in doing what is called separating military from politics, stopping politicization of the military and militarization of politics, which would be healthy for our nation.
Some may also argue that there was mass training in recent years to achieve the goal of unification of forces, and some of the militias were already integrated into the forces. Why go back on the already existing program?
The program is not completed. RRCs, as the supreme law currently, under its provisions, we managed to graduate phase 1. Yes, there was training, and then there was unification of phase 1.
Yes.
There were around 50-something thousand forces which were graduated in 2023. And then there was supposed to be phase 2, which will actually entail more forces being trained together and being oriented, being indoctrinated. As you remember, Thomas Sankara, the great Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, said, a soldier without a doctrine is a potential criminal. They needed to be indoctrinated, they needed to be inculcated with the spirit of patriotism, and to know what are their roles in relation to the citizens, in relation to the state, that they should be subservient, they should be submissive to the civilian authority. Phase 2 was going to happen, but phase 2 has not happened now. What is instead happening is the dismantling of cantonment sites. As we are talking now, all the cantonment sites of the SPLM-IO, they have been bombed by the government using the UPDF Air Force. They have been scattered back into the bushes. They are not in the cantonment areas now, most of the IO forces, which is actually a setback in the implementation of security arrangements. Because we wanted to bring all those forces together with the SPDF, train them together, unify them into one national army under one commander-in-chief.
So who was in the bad faith of implementation of phase 2?
Well, obviously, it is the SPLM-IG, because it is the SPLM-IG which decided to take bold steps in abrogating the peace agreement, including the arrests of our chairman, the arrests of other officials.
The arrest of your chairman came later.
And then bringing foreign forces. Ugandan forces, who are now in South Sudan, they are there illegally. They are there in violation of Chapter 2. Because Chapter 2 provides that all foreign troops in South Sudan must be evacuated apart from the UN mandated, peacekeeping forces.
Honorable Guy.
But the UPDF has been brought to the country.
If phase 1 happened successfully, phase 2 was to go underway, and the government had decided to do disarmament on various parts of the country.
Who is the government according to you? The government is the unity government. The government is not President Salva Kiir alone.
Yes,
the government is the unity government made up of all the parties. Actually, the current government setup we have, party monopolizes power.
The SSPDF now wanted to...
Why would you SSPDF do it alone? It should be done by all the parties.
Army.
It is not yet a national army. It is still considered as a SPLM-IG army, according to the peace agreement. It is affiliated to SPLM-IG. SPLM-IO is affiliated to SPLM-IO. So some of the SWA parties, including the party of Lamakol, they have their own forces. Other parties in SWA also have their own forces. So everybody has their own forces. And these forces are supposed to be merged together now for us to have a national army, which is recognized by all the parties. But the SPDF...
So in your case, you don't recognize the SSPDF as a
currently, the SPDF is allied to SPLM-IG. It is a partisan army. Until it is merged with the rest of the forces in the country, and everybody is accepted now, we have a unified army, which is going to exercise the neutral mandate of protecting the territorial integrity of South Sudan and not be used by any individual to settle political scores. Because as SPDF now, President Salva Kiir can command enough forces, you go and arrest so and so.
Isn't it not now?
Even without a
double
warrant,
speaking?
they will do that.
If you
And
say
they will do it.
you had all agreed for the unification of army and to be called SSPDF, and now you are going back and saying
SPDF is just a name. But the content, those who are currently in it, we have accepted. Actually, I'm those who amended the SPLA Act, which officially we amended the SPLA Act of 2009. I was one of those who amended it in the parliament, recently. And then we now officially, recognize the change of name from SPLA to
SSPDF. Yes.
But in its current formation, those who are there, I mean the soldiers who are there, they are loyal to SPLM-IO politicians. They are loyal to President Kiir in particular. They are loyal to the SPLM-IO, and they see the rest as their enemies according to what they are told. That's why they can be sent to go and arrest Young Machar, who is actually a first vice president. A first vice president who has a constitutional immunity cannot just be arrested like a common. You cannot just arrest him the way he was arrested.
He had some heavy accusations on his back.
Then who put the law in his own hand to ensure that those accusations they are proven right or wrong? There was be a procedure doing it. You were not just to send soldiers to him and arrest him just like that. It is because the president is misusing the security apparatus for his own for his own political gain at the expense of the rest.
What solution do you have now? Do you suggest that it can take us out of this predicament?
Arras is the only reliable blueprint for clearing all the mess we have in South Sudan. It's very comprehensive and it does not favor any party. When we talk about Arras, some people think that it is favoring IO, but it's not favoring IO. Arras is actually an equalizer. It creates a level playing field for everyone.
Now, coming back to your party, Honorable Guy, your party is, I think people term it as it is on a deathbed.
Which people say that?
Political analysts.
Not every political analyst.
They say it is on a deathbed. Currently, SPLM-IO, it has now fragmented into different kind of forms that I think you yourself know better. You have a new interim chairperson by your chairperson in agreement in Juba by the name Parkwal, and recently you are also removed from the from the party. I think we saw the document circulating online. What's your say on that?
I would say that is just a joke business from one individual named called Stephen Parr. Stephen Parr is was one of the members of IO Political Bureau, just like myself.
Was?
Yes, because he was suspended from the IO Political Bureau and from the IO in general. Way back in March. In April, it was in April when it was suspended. When the party discovered that it was engaged in subversive activities which undermined, our basic documents, our principles as a party. So the element of divide and rule is not something new. It is a tactic which has been used by oppressors since time immemorial, beginning with the colonialists. They use divide and rule. And this same policy, unfortunately, is still being practiced by the liberators of yesterday, and it is counterproductive in as far as nation building is concerned. It is the element of divide and rule which makes SPLM-IO to weaken the opposition. They have been doing this for a very long time, buying off people, intimidation, and those that they are bought off, they make them to sing with their tune. They become their convenient outfit of opposition. Those who cannot point things out to their face that you are not doing this right, you're not doing this right. You just sing to their tune. And most of the opposition now in South Sudan, most of the people who call themselves opposition, apart from SPLM-IO, they don't oppose the government. They just use the name of the opposition to be in the government, but they don't oppose the government. But SPLM-IO is the only party we can come out openly and tell the government this is wrong. If you remember, we had in the parliament on the contentious bill of the National Security Act, 2014 Amendment Bill 2024. You saw what we did at Iowa. We stood up to that unconstitutional bill because the provisions, especially Section 54 and Section 55 of the National Security Act, they contravene Article 159 of the Transitional Constitution of South Sudan, 2011 as amended. Article 159 says the role of National Security Service is to gather information, analyze that information, and advise relevant law enforcement agencies. But Article 54 and Article 55 give the national security powers of arresting people and detaining them arbitrarily, which actually contravenes the Constitution. And there is no statute of Parliament which should contradict the Constitution.
You, the members of Parliament,
we stood up as IO. We oppose it. If you saw in the media, the fight we put up against that bill, but the mechanical majority of the SPLM-IO and the affiliated parties was used to bulldoze, and it was passed.
So currently now you're saying Parkwall is not your chairman?
Parkwall is not my chairman by any means. Parkwall in any case is not even an IO member currently.
So are you saying now his fragment is SPLM-IO?
Actually, we consider him a defector. In simple terms, we don't even consider it a fragmentation. Why IO is still intact as an organization. Parkwall and some few elements have decided to defect.
So who is currently your chairman or acting interim chair?
Our chair is still His Excellency Dr. Gai Mayen Luk as the chair, because he has not been removed. He was elected in convention and he's still a chair. And because he has been rendered incapable of executing his duties currently, we've triggered a constitutional provision which makes his second in command, run the party on a temporary basis.
Who is that?
And the deputy, as you are aware, is Comrade Nathaniel Oyet. That's according to our basic document. So Nathaniel Oyet is the current acting chair of IO. We have our Secretary General who's also there. We have all the other structures of the party. They are intact. Nothing has changed. So the issue of parties, it's a non-issue. Yeah.
Coming to you now on an individual aspect. You have you've acted as a spectator in the recent changes of the SPLM-IO in regards to the changes and reforms, welcoming their current wave of change, of transitioning in injecting young people into the positions of power. So, do you actually believe that the transition is happening?
Are you talking about secession politics in SPLM-IO?
You've been a spectator, and we've seen in your writing.
A commentator, you mean? Yes, I've been a commentator, in a sense, and a spectator as well.
Yes.
Well, under normal circumstances, as you may be aware, we are different parties. I have my own political party. The political party is a different political party. I do know for a fact that is a political party which has no democracy. There's a political party which is a one-man show, where one man will fire people from the political bureau, where one man will fire his deputies and appoint anyone he wants. We know that is how that party is. And the members of the party, I know most of the SPLM-IO members, and I talk to them, a lot of them, who are very unhappy with how they are being dictated in their party. But they have no choice, because they know that is the reality. The reality is there is no democracy in their party. But it is their business as SPLM-IO. Our business is peace implementation as opposition. And if they make changes, internal changes in their party, in government, seats which are allocated to them, they can put anyone there. They change whoever. That's not our issue. Our issue is when those changes affect peace. This is when, as members of the opposition, will now begin to have a say. In the political bureau we had this year, in February, we had a political bureau meeting at SPLM-IO. Just a few days after Bolmel, it coincided with the appointment of Bolmel as vice president. Dr. Oriek, our chairman, welcomed it as a part of AOB after our meeting was done. He said, by the way, as members of the SPLM-IO political bureau, you should know, as IO, we don't have an issue with whoever comes in the SPLM-IO as the vice president or as what. It is their prerogative. We are willing to work with anybody for the implementation of peace. So we don't have any problem with the appointment of Benjamin Bolmer. We don't have an objection to it. Let us work for the peace implementation. We don't have an objection to his rise. It is his SPLM-IO member. Whether they accept him or reject him, that's up to them. But as we don't have an issue with him.
As we are winding up, Honorable Guy, let's travel to fantasy, the utopian world. Assume now you've been given all the powers, all powers possible. How can you transform South Sudan in 2 years?
In African culture, they say that no matter how big a tree is, no tree is bigger than the forest. So a nation is like a forest made up of different trees, and everybody, small or big. Those who are what difference in status and whatnot. So a nation, for it to thrive, we must respect every citizen. We should embrace consensus-based politics, which respects the views of everyone.
Consensus, number 2.
Rule of law.
Number 3.
Nation has to be run based on the rule of law. Number 3, we should now, as someone who's in authority, you make sure you concentrate on making your citizens resourceful. Making them resourceful, and the major means of doing that is giving them education. South Sudan now is a country which has one of the lowest literacy rates in the world, probably less than 30%. One of the worst in the world. And with that literacy rate, we cannot build a viable nation state. We need our citizens to be resourceful. But these resourceful citizens are what are going to make a powerful nation. Like America is not as strong as it is today by accident. It is because it has very, very brilliant and very resourceful citizens, and all other powerful nations of the world. So we have to have, for South Sudan to be powerful, for South Sudan to prosper, we have to have a resourceful population, an educated population. So we must also, give a priority to education.
Any parting shots from to our people of South Sudan and the scholars who watch this show?
My parting shot would be, yes, we are having a lot of challenges as a country, as a people. We are facing the worst kind of situation, unlike what you might find anywhere in the world. But our people should know there comes a calm after every storm. All the challenges we are facing now will pass. We will become a prosperous nation. We have to love our country. We have to stand up for our country. Nobody's bigger than our country. Our people should know that. All of us are equal before the law.
So scholars, I think this has been a good conversation with none other than Honorable Gai Mayen Luk. Many of you call him comrades as people from University of Nairobi. Your comrade is here, and congratulations by day. I've seen you're finally finishing your LLB.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming. So I don't have much more to say, scholars. I'll not give you a long break again. So I have been your host, Admiral Carl Gordon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Admiral.